and turn my volume off.
Howdy, folks. How are you? It's me, Bob Harris, footballdiehards.com. You can hit the link. Got people asking a few questions here. So we're just trying to get this all set up so we can do this in the future a little more easily. You can hit the link, use the link, paste the link in. You should be able to watch it. But if you're not participating, it'll show up behind me and you can watch the picks come in. We're just kind of doing the introductory here, Kevin. So thanks everyone for coming as we kind of work through some of the issues. We'd like to get you in the mock drafts. If you want to go ahead and jump in the room using the link that I pasted at the top of the chat, just paste that into your browser and you can jump in and claim a team. And we've got a handful of people already in, some of the staffers, Jamie Calandro, Emil Cadlick, myself. Scott Kobe is here, Mr. High Stakes King. Matt Whitfield is here as well. He regulars in the chats on Saturdays. I'll be drafting in the 11th spot. So there's still about 7-8 teams remaining for you to claim if you don't want to see it. Oh, you don't see the link. Okay. There's something I need to do to I'm not sure if it shows it. If you look right above you in the chat, you don't see it? Try it again. All right, so the link is not showing up. I thought that might be the case in Twitter. I'm going to go ahead and put this out on in YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and put this out on my Twitter feed until I can figure out how to do that. So the link is also in the email if you got it, I believe. So, or maybe not. Okay, I'll put it out on Twitter and we'll try to fill the draft up that way. In the meantime, this is something we're going to have to work on over time. I knew pasting into the YouTube chat was a little bit of an issue for some reason. I don't know if maybe the moderator or somebody in the chat can. There it is. You can try that now. See if that works. Try the one that just went up from the Football Diehards account. He can actually put links in. I can't. You have to be a moderator in the chat. So that link should work. And you can jump in and just claim a team really easily. So let me know. There it is. Yeah, so go ahead and grab that. I thought when I pasted links in, it was going to be a little bit of an issue. That's why we're doing the test, people, so I can figure this out. In case you didn't know, I'm Bob Harris. You see me every Saturday here. We're going to try and do more of these. Just want to test out the technology. We're doing these on Sleeper. And, of course, the Sleeper account is probably helpful if you wanted to get in on it. I'm going to go ahead and put this out on my Twitter account so we can fill it up quickly. Give me 1 second here. All you need is a sleeper account to jump in. And we'll see if that helps out a little bit. This is a 12-team draft, PPR, usual assortment of fun. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, or 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a flex, tight end, kicker, and a defense, and 1-minute timer, so standard fare. It's kind of interesting to see how some of these play out. I know everyone's in the Scott fishbowl fever. This will be different from that. There will only be one. There won't be a full first round of quarterbacks. This will be a little more normal of a draft, and I think we are almost filled up. 3 more spots, 1, 2, 3, actually 4 more teams to go. So we'll give it another minute, then we'll start out, and I'll sit here and make fun of your picks and my picks, and kind of discuss some of the values that we see going forward. And in the future, we'll continue doing this. We'll be bringing in some of the staffers. I know Jamie is in here, and I think 1 team to go before we are full and ready to start rolling. So we'll get there in just 1 minute. But yeah, this is one of the things we like to do a little bit. We've done it in the past, and we just want to make sure the technology is all set up and working well. As you can see, a few glitches to start off, just in general, the figuring out how I can paste a link in. Mauricio Gutierrez jumped in. That's fair. And by the way, if you're not on Sleeper, go ahead and make an account for the future. And we are now full. Mauricio, thank you for jumping in. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and crank up the timer. We'll see. I'm expecting Jonathan Taylor to be the first pick overall in these drafts, unlike the SFB, where you're seeing a lot of different picks. And Jamie Calandro will get the ball rolling, and we'll go from there. So bring up the screen. Streaming on the YouTube channel. Let me answer a tweet or two here. And get some people in here so they can see it. All right. So Jamie did take Jonathan Taylor. Not a huge surprise. Seen that probably in about, I don't know, 99% of the drafts I've been in. That went well. And we have pick number 2 on the clock. So just generally speaking, you see, I'm trying to think of the number of times. There'll be someone like who wants Cooper Kupp really bad, and they know if they don't get him with the first pick, they're never going to get him. And that is a truly defensible situation. If you want somebody other than Jonathan Taylor and you're drafting in the first round, and if you want Cooper Kupp and you're drafting first overall, that's the only place you're going to get him, right? Or if you want some other player. And I think it's hard for me to go against Jonathan Taylor, but some people will.
Come on.
I'm going to get a couple tweets out here so people can watch. The multitasking is not going well for me tonight. Austin Eckler, 2nd overall. I have concerns about Eckler. I think it's, not, again, a defensible pick. The 20 touchdowns last year, to me, seem like it's going to be a little bit difficult to duplicate for him, especially when you consider the rushing touchdowns. He had 12 rushing touchdowns last year. That's 9 more than he's ever had before. And so that's going to be a little interesting. I like Christian McCaffrey an awful lot, but we know the downside with him. By the way, getting back to Eckler, he's one of the few guys who says, I don't want all this work, right? I don't need all those touches. And maybe he doesn't, The 200, I think it was 206 carries, I want to say, last year. Pretty high number for him. They bring in Isaiah Spiller. They've kind of swung and missed on the replacement backs or the complementary backs for him the last 2 drafts. It was Joshua Kelly 2 years ago, Larry Roundtree the 3rd last year. Spiller seems like an upgrade. Maybe they can limit that workload a little bit, and that could be addition by subtraction for Eckler, who thinks he's a little better with the lighter workload. So there you have it. Christian McCaffrey, look, I'm all in on this, right? I love it. I get it. 23 games missed over the last 2 seasons. It's, you can make a pretty good argument. I tend to be injury agnostic. I think anyone can get hurt. If you have fears about Christian McCaffrey, there are plenty of other fish in this first round C, right? Including Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. There will be others. I won't throw their names out there until people have picked them. But that's the point, right? This is your teams are your teams. I know some people, Joe Pisapia, my friend at Fantasy Pros, he's fine drafting Christian McCaffrey in the first round, but not until those top three receivers have come off the board. We've seen two of them come off so far in Jefferson and Kupp, coming off at number 5 and 6, respectively. Jefferson ahead of Kupp, again, defensible. Cooper Kupp is coming off a once-in-a-lifetime season, right? It's called once in a lifetime for a reason, because it's unlikely to happen again anytime soon. And that's the obvious concern there. So Jefferson, you're projecting a little bit, right? And that's part of this. I always say, and people make fun of it. It's kind of a cliche. Don't draft last year's best team. Draft this year's best team. Sorry, Andrea. We'll be doing these more going forward. If you guys have questions about this draft as it's ongoing, throw them in the chat, and I'll watch for those as we follow along. But you're trying to project this year's best team, and you look at the Rams, the changes they've made to the coaching staff, bringing in the Rams former coordinator Kevin O'Connell, although not the play caller there, he's obviously bringing that offense with him. Could be good news for Kirk Cousins. Could be good news for Justin Jefferson, who, if you're playing the projection game, you're saying, oh, look, there's the new Cooper Kupp. I don't know if I'd go that far, but certainly, this is going to be more downfield passing, something Jefferson lamented last year. So I'm all in on McCaffrey with that third overall take. I'm with you there. Najee Harris goes to Emil Kadlick. And that is totally defensible too, just based on workload, right? And maybe that's what you want. I had problems with Harris last year that he wasn't very efficient. The per yards average wasn't great. A lot of it was dependent on Big Ben dumping the ball off. It's possible the quarterback play here will be better. It's definite that the quarterback, whoever it is, will have a better arm than Big Ben. So maybe they'll have a little more downfield work, but Najee Harris still a rock solid pick. Followed by Justin Jefferson, as I said. I think that's look, guy has been rock solid consistent the first two seasons. Cooper Kupp, there have been issues for him, right? He's had injury problems before. If you're worried about Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry just last year missed 9 games. Prior to the 9 games, I'm on the clock. I will make a pick right here. I'm going to go ahead and gain a little leverage over the field at one position that I like. And grab Travis Kelce right there. Like that leverage over the field. I'll kind of pay attention here so I don't miss my next pick. We're at pick 12. First round, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, Najee Harris, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Travis Kelce. And now we are waiting for the 12th for Mauricio. No rush, Mauricio. Plenty of time on the clock, so take care of your business there. But Kupp, he's had issues in the past too, has missed time due to injury. Don't expect it. I'm not banking on it. Derrick Henry, I'm not banking on him getting hurt either. I think he's an unusual player who CeeDee Lamb goes. That's a very popular play. I'm not banking on Derrick Henry getting hurt. Look, I get it. He's coming off a foot injury. He has had a massive workload. You listen to the people who cover this team closely, and they will remind you he is not like normal people. Maybe he is like normal people. But the upside there. So last year when he got hurt, he had 219 carries, I want to say, through 8 games. Pace for a crazy high number. Let me go ahead and grab my running back here, as I like to do. Interesting build. This is where it starts getting interesting to me. You kind of see how the builds go and how people start putting together their roster. We'll talk about that. But Henry, 219 carries, was leading all running backs in fantasy scoring by a huge margin when he went down. Then he comes back for the divisional playoff game. The output wasn't great, but it was 20 carries. It was still the Derrick Henry-like workload, considering it was his first game back, much like we saw with Cam Akers. It wasn't super high-end production, but the fact that Cam Akers came back from a torn Achilles, 6 months, and was able to get a full workload, and that by itself is pretty impressive. Oh, I see Mauricio's number is earlier than me. Okay, I see it. I thought Voice en Fuego was you, Mauricio. Now I see. All you got to do is pay attention. So the builds are starting. So, a couple teams now have gone tight end. Fantasy Dukes also. Mark Andrews, high end play. So Joe Mixon, Mark Andrews. This is not a tight end premium league, but I think the argument here for the people drafting tight ends early is simple. You're looking for leverage over the field. It's an unusual position group. There's not a ton of high end players, whether you call that tier 4 or 5. Then there's kind of a tier break, and then followed by the T.J. Hawkinsons, et cetera, of the world. But if you get one of those top 5 guys, you're gaining a little leverage. I'm going to include George Kittle in that mix a little bit. Or at the tail end of that tier. Maybe you start the new tier with him. Whatever the case, you're expecting that top tier of tight ends to really outproduce the others and give you. This is not thought about Andrews after I was sniped on Kelsey. I'm glad I was able to snipe somebody. You think about the DFS, and Jamie will tell you this as he often talks about the DFS. You're looking each week for those players that are going to stand out from the field, and weekly fantasy is no different from daily in that regard. You win the weekly positional battles. At more positions, you're likely to win. Interesting start for Voice and Fuego, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, a wide receiver start. We're seeing it there too with IT Lane, with Jamar Chase and Deebo Samuel. 2 running back approach from Browns fan 221 with Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara. So we'll have some interesting different builds here to follow along with and see how these teams play out. And that's kind of one of the fun. If you don't listen to me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, and if you subscribe, you should. It's a Football Diehards program on 5 days a week now, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Myself, Mike Dempsey. We talk about these things a lot. We do a lot of mock drafts. You'll hear our mock draft Mondays. Jamie Calandro, the man picking in the first position, will join us on many of those. And we kind of talk these things through and do this, and we'll be doing more of these here as well. Hit the subscribe button so you get notifications. If you're a subscriber, you'll get the emails on these. So some more balanced approaches with a wide receiver and running back. That seems to be the most popular approach so far. Tight end, running back, either way. So we've got 2 teams with 2 wide receivers start to build, and 1 team with 2 running backs. We'll see how they go balanced. I know how I feel about having this first pick or the 12th pick. I like both the ends. I think at the first pick, you feel really confident when you have Jonathan Taylor on board. Then I feel like I have a lot of flexibility, right? I can go the best wide receiver available, and man, I see some wide receivers out there that I'd be dying to have right now. You can then maybe go around, get one of those top tier tight ends, get another running back, go 2 receivers, however you like to build. See a lot of talk about the 0 RB kind of situation. Here's what I'm finding a lot of, and there's a two running back start from Kev. I think it's QB. OB. And there's Jamie. A little Giants fandom showing there, I'm guessing. Taking a gratuitous shot at Jamie Calandro. That's the wide receiver I was getting excited about. That's a nice start. Saquon Barkley, you see his ADP rising. I know in the NFFC ADP right now where people have some money on the line. You see Barkley rising. He's running back 9. Top 10 running back on the NFFC, which I find very interesting. We're obviously have high hopes for this coaching staff to come in, and look, it's a low bar. The last staff was not creative, very creative offensively. They were horrible, right? That offense barely was operational. They've upgraded some on the offensive line, but mostly it's the coaching staff. We're putting some faith in Brian Dable, the new head coach, former Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, who comes in, and we're hoping he can make this a NFL type offense. So one of the things Dable was known for in Buffalo, aside from developing Josh Allen and turning him from a guy we kind of viewed as an inaccurate, kind of rough, unpolished product at quarterback into a very accurate, super polished product at quarterback that we're all drafting fairly early. So that's the hope there. And maybe with some competent offensive coaching, Saquon Barkley, who did get, feature back numbers when he was healthy last year. And remember, he was hurt against Dallas, tweaked that ankle, and it was just such a freak injury, right? And I do preach the injury agnosticity. I think in this case, this is a big reason why. I'm going to say on this, and Jamie, you can jump into the chat if you want. I feel like he hasn't been the same explosive. He hasn't looked as explosive as we saw in his rookie season since then. He was hurt in his second year. But I just thought really that year we didn't quite see the same guy. So I'm hoping we see him again. Love the Leonard Fournette pick, by the way. We got Emil Cadlick coming up on the 3rd pick. There goes Kyle Pitts, kind of what you're seeing a lot of, the 3rd tight end off the board. The questions in Atlanta are obvious. Quarterback play. Can he overcome the change at quarterback with Marcus Mariota? Here's my view of this, right? And look, Kyle Pitts, 1,000-yard receiver last year, right? One of the greatest rookie seasons of the year. Why aren't we more excited about him from fantasy purposes? 1 touchdown. If he scored 6 touchdowns last year, we'd be having a much different conversation about Mr. Kyle Pitts. There's no doubt about it, right? So touchdowns are the most volatile stat here. I talked about it with Austin Eckler. I talk about it with Jonathan Taylor. Hell, there's going to be some regression there, right? It's almost locked in. It's going to be hard for him to get 20 touchdowns. That said, like Mike Clay pointed out to me the other night, you're seeing, him get so many short yardage goal line looks. He gets a lot more than most of the other running backs. Had a ton of them last year, but like 20 touchdowns, a lot of touchdowns. That's not usual. Cooper Kupp, there's going to be regression, right? In both touchdowns and production. Again, it was a once in a lifetime season. Some of these other players appear to have room to grow. Jamar Chase had a little ups and downs. It was a strong finish, right? But, put the whole season together. Huge, big play threat, has a lot of ceiling. So we're heading in, almost finished with the 3rd round. It's going nicely. I want to take a look at Scott Kobe here. Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins with Aaron Jones sandwiched in between. Kind of a nice balanced start. The same with Matt Whitfield. Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin in between Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's an interesting guy. You see him. I saw the ESPN running back rankings this week. If you guys hadn't seen those. Chubb is ranked right up there. I don't think anyone argues that Nick Chubb isn't one of the best pure runners in the NFL. The question is, what is he for fantasy? Because Kareem Hunt is there. We're going to have questions about this offense. The Deshaun Watson, the specter of him looming. Will he play? Won't he play? How will this offense evolve if it is? And either way, it's going to evolve, right? Because they bring in Jacoby Brissett to kind of work away. Frankie Probst in the chat thinks the Pitts will be Mariota's security blanket. I think so, too. And getting back to that, there's something to be said for creative coaching. I talked about it with Barkley. We're kind of enthusiastic about this because Brian Dable is if nothing else, super confident, right? And you could say high end. I think Arthur Smith has shown that with what he did with Cordero Patterson last year, finding I always describe it as unlocking the Rubik's Cube of talent that made Cordero Patterson effective, right? Cordero Patterson is not a good running back. He's not a good wide receiver. But parts of his game within those 2 positions, he does amazing things. And Arthur Smith found those things and focused on using them, thinking that he could take Marcus Mariota and get the most out of him. And obviously, they were working on some red zone issues. They weren't a good scoring offense last year. I'm on the clock. I better pick before my clock runs out. Let's see what I can do. An unsexy pick. I think there's totally unsexy pick, but I like it a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take David Montgomery there. Playing the volume game. I'm going to tell you my draft will not be the best draft I ever do because I'm sitting here yapping about everyone else's draft, and that's part of the fun. That's why we're here. At some point, we'll bring some more people on to comment on these things with me. Until then, I will battle it out, wait for my next pick. But the Pitts thing with, thinking Arthur Smith can't get something out of Marcus Mariota, who, by the way, is familiar with Arthur Smith from their time together in Tennessee. So at least he's not learning a new language. Doesn't have to figure out all new technology and how to pull that off. I'm already unhappy with my team. I should have gone more high end. So it's interesting. I sat in for Jeff Ratcliffe on his show recently, and something he had been harping on was getting locking in one of the top wide receivers early, and then hammering the wide receiver value. He sees a lot of value in the wide receivers, and I've tried that in some drafts, and I've had some luck with it. So not totally against that. Going receiver heavy early, but getting that one really stud running back, whether you get him in the 1st or 2nd round, I don't think, there's a big difference to me. If you get a guy you like. I want to see, how did I miss out on? Yeah, Connor by 2 picks. Damn it. I love the value on James Conner right now. You look at him last season, the 6 games Chase Edmonds didn't play. Mike Clay had this stat in his projections. Connor was right up there with Jonathan Taylor, was running back 2 and put up numbers similar. Now he's got to stay healthy. I get it, but this is an explosive offense in Arizona. There is no more Chase Edmonds. I don't see, Benjamin or Darrell Williams pushing for work, or Keontae Ingram pushing him for snaps or cutting into his snap loads. The only thing that can limit him is injury. Again, Bob Harris, injury agnostic. Can't help myself. Appreciate you coming to watch this. If you like what you see, hit the like button. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. Say, Bob Harris, I do not like you. Stop this nonsense. Go ahead. Hit the subscribe button if you get a chance. It's right down right down over there, over yonder. I'm trying to point at things, looking backwards. Troy Olsen was deciding between Jacobs and Pittman, so he liked my pick there. I like Pittman a little bit. I wonder, what kind of ceiling he has as my first wide receiver, right? So, I like the path to workload. I wonder if what we saw last year isn't, kind of what he is, even with an upgraded quarterback. That's what I'm hanging my hat on here, and I think a lot of people are. I think T. Higgins is interesting. We're drafting a wide receiver too, pretty high up in the rankings here, and I think that's perfectly defensible as well. But I think you want that clear alpha receiver. Plenty of people, and I know Scott is a believer in this as well. C.T. Higgins, see the Bengals offense as being able to support 2 fantasy wide receiver ones. Totally don't disagree with that. Mauricio is hoping to get Pittman at 404. I'm glad I was able to. But Mike Williams is a pretty good consolation prize, Mauricio. Go ahead and throw your comments in there. I think Williams, if you look at him last season, early last year, and pardon me if I'm doing the old dog thing, squirrel, as things happen and I'm commenting on them, I'll try and finish my thoughts and do a little better job of that. I love following along as things are going on and kind of relaying the anecdotal information that we have on these things. But Mike Williams, first, 6 games last year, was a wide receiver 1. Is it possible he can stretch that out over the course of a season? Sure. Keenan Allen is a limiting factor for him, as Kev O.B. will continue to hope. Keenan Allen, one of the most consistent high-end producers in the NFL. Interesting seeing Cortland Sutton go off to Scott Kobe ahead of Deontay Johnson. Seem to be some concerns. By the way, there are some big-name wide receivers out there who have not gone yet. So interesting to see that. Russell Wilson obviously on board. So here's the question I was talking to Jake Seeley last night from The Athletic. Who do you like? Is it Cortland Sutton? Is it Jerry Jeudy? I think the 2 different flavors, I think Jake made a really good point on this. By the way, quarterbacks starting to come off in round 4. That's a little later than sometimes you see him. Josh Allen, the first one off there at the 5th pick of the 4th round. That's, I've seen him go as early as 3rd. See him go earlier than that, honestly, in single quarterback leagues. So that's good value in Justin Herbert as well. But the Jeudy Sutton, kind of question, like, who are we taking? Which one do we like better? And the view is widely held, okay, Cortland Sutton is DK Metcalf, and that makes Jerry Jeudy Tyler Lockett. No, it doesn't. Tyler Lockett had a special connection with Russell Wilson and, a super deep threat. I don't know that, and maybe Jeudy turns out to be more along those lines. I think Sutton gives you that big physical high point guy, imposing specimen who can dominate defenders with physically, and Jeudy is going to do it more with his wiles, his route running, and his quickness. And and not to say Sutton doesn't have that, but the projecting trying to do the comparison. Frank Coyle, the old NFL scout, used to call it the Hindu theory of, who's this guy as a reincarnation of somebody. The draft analyst would say, this is the second coming of this guy, right? So I think we're projecting Sutton to turn into the DK Metcalf of the world. So that's a nice hope. Interesting. DK Metcalf, one of the receivers I was surprised that had not gone off the board, going off the board now. So looking at Jamie's start, 3 at the first pick. Jamie has 3 high-end running backs: Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Travis Etienne. Etienne, an upside play. So is Barkley. Mike Evans and DK Metcalf, though, that's phenomenal. Sutton and Tim Patrick Andrea likes, and I don't disagree with you there. I think a lot of people would make that argument. I think Jake basically said that as well on the Football Diehards program last night, was go ahead and, he'd just as soon wait and take Tim Patrick late, rather than, and maybe look at some values at the earlier spot. But Metcalf, I know Michael Sean Dugar at The Atlantic made a pretty good argument. Yeah, Troy Olsen calling DK Metcalf a steal. I think I want to say Metcalf has averaged 72 catches, 1,057 yards, just shy of 10 touchdowns the first 3 seasons. So Michael Sean Dugar was asked if we should expect a downgrade. And he pointed out when Geno Smith was quarterback last year, the numbers were pretty similar. During the stretch that Metcalf started 3 weeks last week, Metcalf caught 14 of 18 targets, 197 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And if you extrapolate those out over a 17-game season, his stats would be comparable. So, Drew Lock is a concern, according to the tennis players of the U.S. Tennis Open, Drew Lock is not good, right? So maybe that'll be an issue at some point, but we'll see. But I think Metcalf at 5, as Troy Olson mentioned in the chat, is a great steal. If you have any questions about any of this or comments, would love to hear what you have to say in the chat. Jump right in, and I'll kind of follow along with those as well. So third quarterback off the board. Russell Wilson is the next Matthew Stafford. Look, Eric Moody at ESPN has projected him as his number one, or made a pretty good argument for why he will be fantasy's number one quarterback. I'm not buying it. I'm not ready to go that high, but is it possible? I think it's totally possible, right? We've seen crazier things happen. So Russell Wilson can be a very good player. We haven't seen that guy for a couple of years. That's my concern. And so, but honestly, new coaching staff, new supporting cast. I think that's fantastic. Joseph Tread Lightly believes Metcalf will give us 100 yards one week and then 2 catches for 19 the next. That is entirely possible as well. I want to point out Kev OB went with Dalton Schultz. That's pretty high price. Like thinking he's at, so the 5 players that, I view as the top 5, tier of top 5 with George Kittle kind of the tail end. They went off as you would expect, whatever order you like. And they're actually in the kind of the order I like them: Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, and Waller, then Kittle. And so then you have a tier break, right? The next tier, Dalton Schultz for me is certainly in there. I like TJ Hawkinson a little better. He went a half a round later, but I don't think that's, that's kind of splitting hairs. If you like Dalton Schultz, look, there's reason to believe this, right, Kev? I think if you're kind of like sitting here, well, wow, we don't think Michael Gallup's going to open the season. Do we really think the Jalen Tolbert, James Washington grouping there is going to make up for what Amari Cooper was producing and Michael Gallup? So I get it. Dalton Schultz was very productive, has a great connection with Dak Prescott. So I don't think that's unreasonable at all. Having him at the top of that tier. I don't have him at the top of that tier, but having him at the top of that tier, because it's a little bit of a crapshoot. I like Hawkinson better because of the anticipated workload. I talked to Benjamin Raven from mlive.com just about 2 days ago, I think. I want to say maybe last Friday. So it's more than that. But anyway, I've talked to him a couple times. He covers the team closely. He is pretty, tuned into the fantasy world. And so the conversation was about Amon-Ra St. Brown and, how the target shares would go. And if you remember, down the stretch last year, St. Brown had no fewer than 10 targets a game in that amazing run. He was the number 2 receiver in fantasy down that stretch there. I think I got auto-picked a couple times. That's okay. I'll take Kyler Murray and Chris Godwin. Jammer in a way. Maybe not ideal for me to draft when I comment. I don't know. I've done this before. I should have been paying more attention. But I got carried away because there's some great things going on in this draft. Not totally against having Chris Godwin starting to talk like he will. Yeah. The latest I'm hearing is there's some optimism about week 1. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not counting on it. I would not count on it. But if it is, great news. And if it's not, if it's like 6 weeks into the season, I'll be fine with that if he opens on pup. Kyler Murray, I wouldn't have probably drafted a quarterback this early if I had been paying attention or more attention or watching more closely. But I don't mind it. I know there are people out there who think, that his upside is there. Got a lot of games. Our friend Casey Joyner will point out, the football scientist, a lot of potential shootout games for Kyler Murray. That's good news. I think early in the season without DeAndre Hopkins, I have some concerns, but plenty of weapons there. As I mentioned, I love James Conner. I really like, I got to turn off my auto pick so it doesn't happen again. That's what it was. I'll figure out how to do that. There it is. You got to be smarter than the app. That is not necessarily my strength. Pat Fryermuth says Frankie Probst will be a top 5 tight end, especially if Pickens starts. It's a little touchdown dependent, but it was a very good season to open the year last year. The good news is, when you think so, this is an interesting point when you bring it up. You think Pat Fryermuth is going to be a top 5 tight end. All right, you still don't have to draft him like that, right? Everyone else is drafting these other tight ends. You can continue to hammer value at the other spots and kind of catch him, jump up a couple rounds ahead of ADP if that's where you want to be, and still land them and still get great value for a guy that you think is going to be top 5. So ADP is not telling you when you have to draft players. It's telling you when players are being drafted and when you should jump up, especially for a player you like. watching this as we go along. Quarterbacks are coming off fast and furious in this round. Lamar Jackson followed my Kyler Murray auto pick, Joe Burrow ahead of Jalen Hurts. All right, I'm not going to get on the soapbox here, but Joe Burrow, I see him going very early. I know in the NFFC he's going fourth. I think he's a fourth quarterback, which I think is, wow, that's a very high price, right? I think he's very good, and I think he might well. I know there are people that will argue with me that he's going to be one of the top, maybe even rival Josh Allen. The problem for me is the same thing that everyone else sees. Why guys like Kyler Murray, even though he hasn't run as much, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts are coming off the board, is they're the Konami code quarterbacks. Same with Josh Allen. To a degree, Justin Herbert has been as well. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that mobility and rushing equity, and that those additional points you get from the ground game from a running quarterback. And I don't know that Joe Burrow gives you that. Maybe last year he was truly limited coming off the rookie ACL tear. It's possible. I like Tom Brady because I like old guys. There's something to be said for that. Also, Tom Brady's very good coming off huge numbers. The receiving core, a little bit of a question. No Gronk, so we'll see how that plays out. Los Leones Physical Therapy Inc. gets pretty early in the draft, but what are we thinking about Christian Kirk and his ADP? There is a point where I jump on Christian Kirk. It used to be round 9. It's been rising, so I don't jump on him as much. I've been in a lot of best balls all season long. My co-host Mike Dempsey works for the Jaguars flagship radio station in Jacksonville. He's been all over him, so I know I have to jump a little bit if I want him. But I felt really good about him in round 9, and this is something I do a lot. Is target these wide receiver ones or anticipated wide receiver ones on teams as they go later. And I'm watching wide receiver 3s go off the board for teams that maybe I'm not sure what the pecking order is, or how many passes there's really going to be. And so, I like that sure workload of a wide receiver 1. I get it doesn't always work out for me, but the value is great. And I can still get those other guys, like, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Talking about Benjamin Raven and TJ Hawkinson. His thought was, Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to get those 10 targets a week, right? But he's going to get 6 or 7. The guy he thinks is going to get double-digit targets every week is Hawkinson. We'll see how that plays out. But, so drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown super early based on those 10 targets or double-digit targets down the stretch, maybe that's a little overthinking it, right? Or maybe a little over-projection. And so maybe you're drafting him too early. Maybe I let somebody draft him a little earlier than I'm willing to take him, and I wait till later and grab it to some team's wide receiver 1. Maybe the X receiver in Detroit, DJ Chark, as a free square play. Not that always works out for me. It did it last year, did it? Juan Masquera wants to know my thoughts on Gabriel Davis this year. All right. So sometimes, what do we remember? The last thing we saw of Gabriel Davis, Scott Jacoby timed out against Kenneth Walker. Scott Jacoby has turned into Bob Harris. Way to go. Just kidding, Scott. I'm just messing with you. Gabriel Davis, he had that huge finish to the season. I think that upside is there, right? There's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. But I think he's a player definitely on the rise. I like him right around where he's going. I like his ADP has kind of been right in the lower, right in that wide receiver 3 lane, whether it's the high end of that. I've seen him go as late as the tail end of that. So I'm not against him going there. Make sure I make a pick. So you'll pardon me for a brief moment as I pay attention to the proceedings a little bit. But I do think, Gabe Davis is the wide receiver 2 in this offense. It's a super explosive, high-end offense with a lot going on. So let me just see. Speaking of this offense and a lot going on, there's a player I like an awful lot, and so I'm going to go ahead and look at the wide receivers here. So I can go either wide receiver, probably have a greater need at wide receiver right here, and maybe need a solid floor guy to get me through the early part of the season if Godwin isn't going. So I'm going to go with Hunter Renfrow. Did I just accidentally take Garrett Wilson? Wow. This happens. No, I got him. I got Renfrow. A high floor player. So how high is Renfrow's floor now with Devontae Adams on board? Talked to people yesterday. Talked to Willie Ramirez, covers the Raiders for the Associated Press. He thinks the floor is still there, and he thinks the red zone work will still be there. We'll see. So now I'm going to take a little bit more of an upside play, take a little bit of a chance at wide receiver, and go Drake London, the rookie in Atlanta. Again, the quarterback play is going to be the issue. But between he and and Kyle Pitts, I'm expecting Arthur Smith to take advantage of these guys in the red zone. What was a big problem at Atlanta last year? They didn't score enough points. I know Cordero Patterson's going to be in that mix as well, but I'm kind of keen on London, one of the few rookies I'll draft. Pedro Resto, what are my thoughts on Dawson Knox going into 7th? I don't mind it. I think he's right in that next tier. He's going to be very touchdown dependent as well, but the touchdowns have come. Again, he's a big part of this offense. But that's one of the things about Davis, him. Look, maybe you wait for the value. Maybe Jamison Crowder 10 rounds later is the value, or 8 rounds later is the value, right? Kind of depends on how you're building your roster. I'm not against Knox. I think he's a developing player. It's easy to forget that he came into the league as kind of a project, didn't have much production during his college career. And he was kind of a guy that the Patriots kind of discovered and, talked up, and then the Bills ended up landing him. But he's been a bit of a project. But last year, the target share was, about 13%, I want to say. Again, this offense, same with Gabe Davis. There's going to be a lot of players involved, and it's going to be, maybe a little difficult for you to get that solid week-to-week for production outside of Stephon Diggs, and maybe Gabriel Davis is part of that as well, right? Maybe it's going to be hard to get that high-end production from those guys, but there are going to be huge spike weeks. You can almost bet on it in this offense. So who do I have pegged, Dennis Bennett wants to know, as the wide receiver 1 in Tennessee, Burks or Woods? Today, I have Woods pegged as the wide receiver 1. Sounds like he will be back in plenty of time from the ACL. It was a clean tear. It was in October, I want to say. So everyone thinks he's going to be back. I think it's also easy to forget how good he's been, how productive he's been in the past. But Burks, there are a lot of questions. Didn't get a lot of time working with his quarterback in OTAs and minicamp and voluntary sessions because he was dealing with asthma. He wasn't in incredibly good shape. I don't want to overplay the hand. Remember when Jamar Chase couldn't catch the football last year? Right? Turns out that was like a brief period of time. He could not catch the football. Then he could catch the football just fine. We knew he could catch the football. We know Treylon Burks is going to be a good player. So don't get too caught up looking down the drinking straw and getting caught up in the moment to moment. But it's not great when you can't, get in the work you need to get in early with your quarterback. Ryan Tannehill's kind of expressed some dismay about it. And I mean, not bitching about it, not complaining, but, kind of lamenting the fact that he wasn't ready to go. And I want to say it was Joe Rexrode from The Athletic I talked to about this, and he seemed a little bit down on him, a little bit more down on him than I would have expected based on, so maybe there's a little more to it. All the reporters were talking about it, though, in case you didn't miss it. But we hear a lot of these things, right? Like, we had the reporting Derek Gunn in Philadelphia, like a really well-connected guy in Philadelphia with the Eagles, talking about Jalen Hurts having some horrible series of practice. And A.J. Brown came to his defense and basically said that was a bunch of BS, right? But whether it's BS or not, should we put a whole lot into this? That's one of the things we try and, work through this time of year, especially if you're on Twitter. You're going to get caught up in that to and fro, that moment by moment, especially once training camp starts, and you're going to hear about someone making a great play in practice, and you're going to literally be able to see that player get drafted in best balls as you're ongoing, just based on these single reports. So I try to keep it. Oh, there goes that Singletary. I think that's a great pick, great value in round 8, the tail end of round 8, 8-11, Devin Singletary. Again, a lot of pieces in this offense. James Cook comes in. They foreshadowed that they wanted a receiving option there when they tried to land J.D. McKissick, right? Instead, they draft James Cook. Devin Singletary is still the running back 1, and down the stretch last season, going into the playoffs, what he had a lot of touchdowns, very busy. I expect him to continue being busy. The people who cover the team on a daily basis expect him to be the lead back. But this is, again, the reason his price is depressed is because there are so many bodies in this offense. The good news is it's an explosive offense. Here's a guy, Allen Lazard. I wanted to talk about this. So you're drafting Allen Lazard. He's never finished higher than a wide receiver 4. Why are we excited about this? Well, because he's in a different role, right? He's not going to be the complementary piece. He could be the primary piece. I'm expecting him to be the primary piece. Last year, he had career highs in catches, targets, yards, all those things. He was heavily targeted in the red zone down the stretch. But Aaron Rodgers needs a wide receiver 1. Is it going to be Christian Watson? I suppose it could be. Is it going to be Sammy Watkins? Maybe. Entirely possible, I guess, but I'm betting on Alan Lazard. The thing about drafting Alan Lazard here is, this could be a league-winning play, and I think Michael Thomas could be as well. I would like to get him a little cheaper, but I'm not seeing him go that much cheaper. But these are guys that could be true wide receiver ones that you're not paying wide receiver one. So again, was talking to Jake Seeley about this last night. If Alan Lazard is a top, 25, if he's a wide receiver 2, you're making out like a bandit here. And the upside is wide receiver 1. Entirely possible that this could happen. So I think these are great kind of plays. Sky Moore going right now. I think you're gambling on the quarterback play here a little bit. Kareem Hunt, great value there. Mike Dempsey somewhere is shaking his fist at the sky, wondering why he couldn't get such a good deal on Kareem Hunt. I will tell you why, because he never waits that long. Emil Cadlick getting Christian Kirk. So a question from Lane Thompson. Who do I think is the sophomore? What do I think of the sophomore QBs? Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, or Justin Fields? I think we all know what we feel about Zach Wilson right now. He's the star of the interwebs. I like Lawrence. I mean, I think with competent coaching staff, there was a reason he was drafted first overall. I have the most confidence in him. Justin Fields, I think, is going off as like quarterback 16 in the NFFC, I believe, well ahead of both of these players. I don't know. I'm not sold, and I hope I'm totally wrong, but the Bears didn't do a lot to work on his supporting cast. Did very little. That trade for N'Keal Harry yesterday, notwithstanding the additions of Harry, Byron Pringle, Equinemius St. Brown. I mean, I hope they work out. You could say the same about the Chiefs, right? Behind, not named Sky Moore. You were hoping that Marquez Valdez-Scantling turns into a thing. I think Juju will be a thing. He's proven it in the past. But these quarterbacks, I think you're playing for that upside. You're not having to draft any of them as a QB1. So that's fine. QB2s with upside. Zach Wilson, they're adding a lot of weapons around him. You're hearing a lot of positive buzz around him on the field and off the field. Fields, not so much. I mean, he's got to make some, his room for improvement this year with a continued limited supporting cast is his ability to process better, right? To, make better reads, make quicker throws, do quicker decisions in an offense. And look, Matt Eberflus comes in, he's the defensive-minded coach, and they started working on that in the draft. Seems perfectly reasonable to expect them to, a lot of people in Chicago thought, wow, they're giving up. They're, kind of letting Justin Fields twist in the wind a little bit. And maybe that's because they're not invested in him, this regime, the new GM and new coach. And maybe they're looking for someone else. That is possible as well. I'm going to stop and make a pick here. I was hoping a decent running back would make it back to me. We'll see what's there. Playing the long game a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take a guy who may end up being a starter at some point relatively soon or not. Dameon Pierce. I'll talk about him in a minute here after I make my other pick. But yeah, so I think those three, I rank them Lawrence, Wilson, and Fields. I didn't see them get a lot of help on the offensive line. I have concerns for Fields. Would like to see it. How do I feel about Garrett Wilson going in the ninth? I feel like that's a little earlier than I would take him. I wonder if he's kind of not like maybe a year away from being super productive, but maybe Zach Wilson will be the GOAT like everyone claims he already is. I'm going to take another look at wide running backs here and see if there's someone that maybe has a little starting upside. A little too early for that guy, a little too, yeah. This is a pick I don't, there's picks we make that we don't like. So Troy Wilson likes Spiller because of Austin Eckler saying he wants less work. I agree with that. By the way, I just took Ronald Jones and Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce, if you listen to the local observers, John McClain from the Houston Chronicle, previously now works on the radio there. So I've kind of been in on Marlon Mack as a free square player. I think he's been very productive, a guy that you can get really late in drafts. He tells me, John McClain is not a fan of that, as he told me on the radio, Marlon Mack sucks. Well, I don't think he sucks, and I still think he's a good free square play. But this rushing game was abysmal. Dameon Pierce gives them a little something, some big playability, something a department they were really not good in last year. There were so many departments they weren't good in last year. My concern for all these backs in Houston is the offensive line is not ideal, right? Ronald Jones, a lot of talk that he could contend with Clyde Edwards-Helaire for that starting role. It's entirely possible, a goal line role, entirely possible. They brought Jerick McKinnon back. That makes me a little less happy. But Garrett Wilson, for me, I mean, I don't know. Corey Davis is still there. He is not a bad player. He's got to stay healthy. Elijah Moore kind of broke out a little bit last year. So I don't know. I'm not sold on Garrett Wilson. I think over the long term, if I was playing Dynasty, I think that I'd love that. I like him an awful lot. But I'm just kind of I'm gonna go ahead and stipulate right now. I'm not a big fan of rookie wide receivers. I know I took Drake London, but I've been kind of in on him all along because I think he has an immediate workload and he immediately becomes the number one receiver there. With all due respect to Mr. Zacchaeus, Olamide Zacchaeus, who may be a sneaky play too. We'll see. Pedro Resto, that Houston backfield. I always think they're a hidden gem, Pedro, and then they fail me because they end up being so bad as a team. But I have some optimism about this offense. James Robinson was the guy I considered right there. Wish I had more value. Speaking of value, wish I had more clarity on where he's at with his return, and maybe he misses the early part of the season. Does Travis Etienne establish himself? I think Etienne. Jamie took him in the 4th round. I love that pick because, again, we kind of remember what we last saw. What we last saw about Travis Etienne was he was drafted to be a complementary piece, right? Well, this belies what he did at Clemson, where he scored 70 touchdowns on the ground, and he was a true feature back over the course of his career there. I think there's maybe a little more there than a complementary piece, and we'll see what happens when James Robinson gets back. But Matt Stafford, I think, in the 10th round, that's gold. Derek Carr, I like in that round as well. I probably would have taken Stafford ahead of both Rodgers and Carr. But I like Derek Carr too. Boy, so many quarterbacks available when you draft late. And you can even look back 2 rounds previous where Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott went off in the 8th round. I think those are both great values as well. So a lot of value to be had at quarterback. I have Matt Stafford ranked higher than some of those guys. So that's totally understandable. Get a couple questions in the chat. How do I see Lane Thompson wants to know the Seattle running back situation playing out? Penny has been injured or was back up to Carson for a long time. Walker takeover. Not only see the Rashad Penny we saw down the stretch last year. What was that? The final 6-5 games, he ran over 200 yards more than any other running back. Was a great scoring threat. I mean, he comes in as a de facto starter to me. If you didn't hear me mention it earlier, I'm injury agnostic. I don't bank on guys getting hurt. Everyone can get hurt. Anyone can get hurt. Yes, I get it. He has a history of being more beat up than most, and maybe that opens the door for Walker. I see a lot of people taking both of them. I'm not as big a fan of that in redraft because there may come a point where it makes for a tough weekly decision that you're as liable, kind of a 50-50 coin toss. I hate those. In best ball, I think it's a great plan, right? Getting that whole backfield. Doing it with Miami's too, where the price is right. I think often what you see in Walker and Penny is you have to take them almost back to back. And I'm not against that. I mean, I get it, but Penny comes in as the de facto starter for me. And talking to the people who cover the team on a daily basis, they all seem to believe that as well. And then the question is, can he stay healthy? Can he avoid the problems that have plagued him in the past? He managed to do that down the stretch last year, didn't he? So it's possible, but I get the concerns. Matt Donaldson wants to know if I see Curtis Samuel being a competent number 2 in Washington this year. Again, a lot of what I know or what I think about these players is what I'm being told from people who are on the ground watching. I think people think that we didn't know how bad his health was last year. He had some issues off the field that were, I think it was like a surgery. I want to say, some kind of injury we didn't know about, some situations we didn't know about. We heard it was like groin injury. Maybe it was a little worse than what we'd heard. So it's been 2 years, though, and they haven't done anything. They have huge plans for him. I've been drafting him as kind of a free square play, one of those guys you can get in the last couple, 2-3 rounds of a draft with the hopes that they do. Remember, this is the coaching staff from Carolina that, made some pretty good use of him. Norv Turner's son, Scott, the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, has a little experience with using him. So the hope is they can get that out of him. I think Jahan Dotson, though, is going to be the wide receiver too there, and you'll see Samuel in that kind of multi-purpose role where he's maybe split, working the slots, running out of the backfield some. Troy also wants to know, am I going to the Football Expo in Canton? That's in Ohio. I will be there for the Kings Classic Draft and, of course, hang out at the Expo some. Might be doing some shows there. You didn't know, I'm Bob Harris, Football Diehards. You can go to that website, footballdiehards.com. All the magazines are out. Some great work from some contributors that are here right now, including Jamie Calandro, who has great DFS articles in all the mags, also contributed to some of the expert polls, as did our friend Scott Kobe, who is drafting right now out of the 5 spot here. So Great work. You can go to the website, footballdiehards.com, order all those magazines. They'll be shipped right to you. The Pro Forecast, the 33rd season of doing that. The draft book, the cheat sheets, the Football Diehards magazine, the last one out. So those are all available. You can order them. If you order them, pay the full price for the magazine. You get access to the website and the premium content, including My Fantasy GM that helps you manage all your teams. And if you're me, that's very helpful. I'm going to miss this pick. So, oh no, I'm not. Let's see. There's a running back I kind of want, and God, I'm all of a sudden getting very Atlanta heavy, and I want to talk about him, so I'm going to grab him right here. And Tyler Algier is the running back I'm talking about. There's been some talk about maybe Cordero Patterson working more at wide receiver. I think that's possible. But either way, Algier is kind of the between the tackles player that Mike Davis turned out not to be for them last year. Maybe we'll see that. Maybe we'll see Tyler Algier. Very productive at BYU, and seems like a guy that'll fit this. And I look forward to saying hi to you. Pedro wants to know how I feel about David Njoku. Yes, this could be the year for him. I think regardless of the quarterback. I'm on the clock again. Let me make this pick before I screw up too bad. Let's see what there is at tight end. I'll wait a little later on that. I'm not really paying as much attention to my team as I probably should have, but we had talked about this guy. Oh, here's a guy. Another case of me going a wide receiver one that's maybe a little under the radar. Hey, Todd Ullman. Thanks for coming, man. We're drafting away here. Next time we'll get you in this damn draft, young man. How you doing, man? So Devontae Parker is kind of an example. And I'll say Jamie made a pick here in this last round, Kenny Golladay. Right, I get it. It's been a huge disappointment, but also we're in the double-digit rounds. Kenny Golladay is still the de facto wide receiver one. Maybe you like Kadarius Toney as emerging as that guy. We saw the full range of what Kadarius Toney could be last year against Dallas, where he caught 10 passes for 190 yards and punched somebody in the face and got kicked out of the game. Kenny Golladay is a guy they have a huge investment in. If we're believing this offense is going to be better, and we're believing Brian Daboll is going to do something to fix Daniel Jones, then Kenny Golladay is going to be part of that. He needs to be part of that, right? So, I mean, these are the kind of players. Devontae Parker has had great success against the New England Patriots in particular. Not so much success, right, against the rest of the world. He's had one real 2019, I want to say, really good season. But beyond that, it's kind of been disappointing. But he's still, brought in there. Looking at that group of receivers, he seems to be the guy who has the best chance of being the wide receiver one there, kind of the alpha piece in that offense for now, heading into the season to me. So I'm fine drafting him because why? It's the 12th round, people. If it doesn't work out, you can move on, and that's what you see a lot of these guys. Getting back to David Njoku for Pedro, I do think again, teams tell the truth. Like, there's two ways teams tell the truth. How they spend their draft capital and how they spend their cash. And the Cleveland Browns spent a lot of cash or invested a lot of money over the next 4 years in David Njoku. And to do that, they let go of the guy they spent a lot of cash on before, who they thought was going to be the thing that they really liked in Austin Hooper, who might be a thing in Tennessee now, people. So don't totally get up. Hey, Hayden Hurst might be a thing in Cincinnati, right? Don't give up on some of these guys, dynasty managers. Doesn't mean you have to run out and buy them and redraft. Maybe you can pick them up off the waiver wire or whatever, however you want to do it. Jamison Crowder goes there as well. No, New England does not seem to throw deep, so maybe they will more. I mean, we saw times when Mac Jones, we all remember, Todd, that 3-attempt game. And, that kind of sticks in our head. But then also, what was it, against Tampa Bay, I want to say in week 4, when he threw, 40, 50 times in the rain against the Tampa Bay. So I don't know. Maybe they'll rely on him a little more. But I think at this point in the draft, it's totally defensible, right, to draft the number one receiver on any team, even the worst passing teams in the league in the 12th round. And again, not paying as much attention to the builds of my team as I should have. I'm going to regret that. This team is not going to be great. But looking at some of the other builds here, I wanted to go back and revisit how some of these teams that started, maybe the multi-receiver teams. Look at Scott Jacoby's team with Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, and Cortland Sutton in the first 4 rounds. Had Aaron Jones mixed in there. Got Antonio Gibson a little later. Jalen Hurts. That turns out to be a pretty well-rounded team, right? So not bad there. Who else went wide receiver early? Oh, the running back early team. Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Javonte Williams, George Kittle. First receiver off the board was Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith, Tyler Lockett, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, a couple young rookies. I think Olave has some hope. I like, the rookie receivers, Drake and Olave, are the ones that interest me at this point, more so than most of the other ones. That's kind of a interesting play. You see this, the old school approach, I would call that, a 1986 approach when I started playing the game. Looking at some of the other receiver heavy early. I'm not seeing, honestly, I tend to see a lot. Voice and Fuego started out with 2 receivers, then kind of balanced it out with a couple running backs. I do like that start with CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Breece Hall, who I have some hopes for. Certainly the path to workload seems to be there. I know Michael Carter's there, but they didn't expend that draft capital again. When the teams tell the truth, when they're drafting and spending that capital, moved up to get Breece Hall. Josh Jacobs, a little less certainty. Again, I talked to Willie Ramirez from the Associated Press yesterday and kind of been floating this theory out to people who cover the Raiders on the regular. Is it possible that the team treats Josh Jacobs like a rental car and just drives him into the dirt? My pick, I'm going to go ahead and grab my defense here. Go a little ahead of ADP for a defense I like because Casey Joyner says I should love them. And I just want to get the pick out of the way. Let's see. I'll go ahead and make my next pick as well. But yeah, that starts CeeDee Lamb, Diggs, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, hoping they run the tires off him. Maybe they don't. Then Jerry Jeudy and Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks, to me, is a pretty fantastic value in the 6th round in this format. I can think of way worse things to have happen. I probably need a second quarterback at some point here. Not that you have to have one, but there's one I really like. I don't know how the bye weeks are going to work out. Where are the Cardinals? This might not work out. Oh, no, the Cardinals are 13, if my memory serves me. Kirk Cousins, the guy that, again, if you're trying to project how these offenses are going to work, you take that Rams offense and move it to Minnesota, and you would think maybe there's a little more downfield passing, and Kirk Cousins is asked to do a little more than he was in the past. Anyway, I like that start. The CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Cooks, Dallas Goedert, Russell Wilson. I like this team a lot. Voice and Fuego, kudos to you, young man or lady. Mauricio Gutierrez, Dalvin Cook, Devontae Adams, James Conner, Mike Williams, Marquise Brown, Lamar Jackson, Elijah Moore, Russell Gage. I like that start as well. That looks like a really solid team to me as we're kind of winding this down. If you guys want to chime in the chat with the teams that you like, that you think look like something you wouldn't mind fielding this season, would love to hear your thoughts. Again, if you like the content here, hit the like button. If you are tired of Bob Harrison, have had enough, hit the dislike button. Hate me. Don't hate me. I'm not that bad. Again, we're planning to do this more and more. This was kind of just an initial draft to test out the technology, make sure everything works okay, and the little mini Bob Harris in the corner of your screen doesn't get too obtrusive. And I'll kind of, let you know who the picks are behind me as we get there, so you don't miss out on anything. A lot of defenses going off here. But we'll be bringing in other voices, and yeah, I'll see you, Mauricio and I will be drafting in Los Angeles in the Scott Fish Bowl, the live draft at the Trophy Smack headquarters. By the way, if you want to find out more about all that, tune into this Football Diehards on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Tomorrow night, first hour will be normal. Second hour, my guests will be Chase Burden will join me at FF Intervention. You all know Chase. And we'll be joined by Scott Fish, who will talk about the Scott Fish Bowl. We'll have some strategy talk for a segment, and then we'll have Matt Walsh from Trophy Smack come on, and we'll talk about the live draft in LA and what's going on there. So a lot of Scott Fish talk tomorrow night on the Football Diehards in hour 2. So tune in for that. We'll be off Friday, and then Dempsey and I will both be back Monday, me with a hugely successful SFB 12 draft in my hip pocket, undoubtedly. A lot of great people coming to Los Angeles, by the way. Just look forward to seeing them. Jeff Ratcliffe, Michael Fabiano, Jen Piacenti, John Paulson, Lindsay Rose will be there. Mauricio Gutierrez will be there. Tom Everett Scott, the actor, will be there. Liz Loza will be there, man. And I'm leaving people out, and I feel stupid for doing it, so I shouldn't have started. But should be a really fun draft. Carolina, Matt Donaldson says, has a soft schedule early. So when I look at that schedule when drafting for early success with a team that might not be great later in the season. So for me, strength of schedule is a little bit more of a hair splitter, especially early in drafts. I'm more focused on the late season schedule when I'm, if that's going to be the case, and that's something I work on as the season is ongoing. But when you're drafting and you're splitting hairs, I do think it's fair to look at that. But honestly, who are we drafting in Carolina outside of Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore? I mean, I don't see a lot of guys going. I don't even see a lot of guys going as great values. Let's see, what do we got here? Has Robbie Anderson gone in this draft yet? Oh, I'm on the clock again. I'll get a little value. Get my value tight end here if I made it in time. And I think I like Gerald Everett. He's a guy that I think is going to fare pretty well playing with Justin Herbert. A lot of talk. If you read the Athletic piece, they're using him on jet sweeps and all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm not buying into all that. They will or they won't. That's fine. Hoping they do, but if they don't, I'll be okay. I think he'll be a solid addition. They've always been tight end heavy in this offense. And there we go. Draft is over. We'll kind of look it over a little bit. And again, this was kind of a little test to have to see how the technology works and make sure we could pull all this off in the future. I'll be bringing people on with me to discuss the drafts and allow me to make better picks than I did. If you have anything you want to add in the comments, if there's anything you want to see here, we'll shake it up. We'll do different kind of drafts over the course of time. Just kind of went with the vanilla PPR draft: 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, flex, defense, kicker, etc. So a lot of fun. But Matt, to answer your question, the early part of the season, I'm not really looking so much. When I look at the strength of schedules that come out prior to the season, I'm looking down the stretch run. The playoff schedules are more important to me. You'll find magazines this year, especially with a focus on those playoff schedules. But we have the whole thing, so definitely cover that for you. Have that all covered for you as well. A lot of tight end talent trail end of drafts. I agree with that. This seems to be the year. I'd like to, Scott or Matthew or anybody just want to jump in a little bit. Jamie in the chat and Todd especially. I know you're out there playing the high stakes as well. If there's anything, basically what we're seeing is draft tight ends early or punt and go late. And I think that's, pretty much what I'm seeing. There's maybe some people I like in the middle tier. I kind of keen on Zach Ertz. And I think that's, a solid play, at the right price. Already going this draft, I think it was round 8. I think that's fair value for him. I like him a little better than Dawson Knox, who he went ahead of. And, and I think, right where I would expect him to go. So I'm not drafting in that middle range that often, but I'm taking Zach Ertz. After that, if I punt on the early, I miss out on the top end tier. I'm taking chances on guys I like. And I mentioned some of them. David Njoku is a guy I think, has a pretty good opportunity. Gerald Everett, I think, has a pretty good opportunity. You can wait till super late. Irv Smith was last year's, projected breakout player. Talking to the people in Minnesota, they think he could be that again. Matthew Collar from Purple Insider thinks that, he's right back where he was, right back from where he started from. And there's Juan asking about that. I see you now. And that's, coming off the knee injury. Matt Donaldson more worried about a super flex league I'm in because having to take a quarterback early seems tough to gauge. I'm a super flex. I'm probably projecting I'm in a dynasty league, right? A super flex dynasty league. And when it started up, Andrew Luck I think I had the first or second pick overall. I took Andrew Luck, and it was right before he retired. So I've been playing catch up in that league ever since. I think it translates to my other leagues, right? We kind of our big concerns remain our big concerns no matter what, even through, even when it has nothing to do with the league we're playing in now. Kind of like what we remember, the last thing we saw of a player, Gabriel Davis. We're drafting that 4-touchdown game. We're sure we're going to get it. I'm not sure we are. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll get some of those. But I think, in a super flex, I am going quarterback early. If you're in the Scott Fish Bowl, you're seeing a lot of different builds there, but most of them involve quarterbacks early. Seeing a lot of quarterbacks go in the first 2 rounds in that draft for sure, and those drafts for sure. So that's where I'm at on that, Matt. I do tend to, I try to come out at least the first 4 rounds with both my top 2 quarterbacks. And a lot of times it'll be the first 3 rounds. I don't usually do it first and second, but that, it varies. One thing about drafting, as all of you know, it's great to have an idea of what you want to do. I know people going to the draft, I'm doing this approach, and that's great, doing that approach. Until that approach doesn't work, then you need to have some flexibility, right? I think that makes perfect sense to be more flexible in drafts and not stick with the plan going in that you had going in when that plan is obviously falling apart due to no fault of your own, circumstances that are out of your control. And it's called the rest of the league. They're drafting too, and they're smart players, and they're making moves that might make it difficult for you to keep up or to execute your strategy the way you want. That's perfectly normal. Happens all the time, right? So don't be afraid to make those adjustments. And if you go in with a plan, I'm going zero running back or modified zero running back, or I'm going wide receiver heavy, sure, execute that plan as you want to execute that plan. Or in a super flex, I'm not going to get my second quarterback till then. But when value presents itself, or value is taken off the board and you're forced to make changes based on that, be ready to do that. Don't be stuck in that single strategy. Anyhow, I want to thank everyone for showing up. Again, we'll be doing these more. Watch your email if you're subscribers to footballdiehards.com. If you're not a subscriber to footballdiehards.com, go do that. Subscribe to this YouTube channel as well. You get notifications there. Follow my Twitter feed at footballdiehard. Follow the site's Twitter feed at ffdiehards. And we'll be posting these on Twitter. I also do my Saturday chats. Don't know that I'm going to do a live stream this Saturday. Was thinking I was going to try from the Scott Fish Bowl, but I'm not sure my technology will be up to it. I may give it an attempt, but I don't want to get my hopes up too high if that doesn't work out. But I'll be back the following week and every Saturday after that, except for when I'm in Canton, Ohio, mostly. Might take a day off or something, but we'll try to have someone in my place if that's the case. But we will do more of these. We'll get more voices in here, so you don't have to just listen to my monotone. If you haven't heard enough of my monotone, tune into Football Diehards. We're off tonight for a in-game FSGA experts draft. We'll be off Friday night as I travel to Los Angeles, but I'll be on tomorrow with the Scott Fish content that you were after, including a visit with Scott Fish. We'll have Chase Vernon on there as well, Matt Walsh, and some other voices talking strategy, all kinds of aspects of the Scott Fish Bowl. So there you have it, everybody. I want to thank everyone who took part in the draft. Really appreciate you jumping in. We'll be doing more of these, and some of you will be appearing on here with me. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Really appreciate it. Take care. Hit that subscribe button right there.